All right, let's jump right in. Most of us, we feel like we've got a pretty good handle on the book of Acts. It's the story of the early church, Peter, Paul, all the missionary journeys. But what if I told you there's another story running right underneath the surface? A story of cosmic warfare, of territorial spirits, and a divine plan to reclaim the entire planet. What if the book of Acts isn't just a history book, but a map? A hidden supernatural map of the world.
I mean, think about some of the really strange stories in there. Take what happens in Lystra. Paul heals a guy, and the immediate reaction from the entire city isn't just applause. They try to offer sacrifices to him and Barnabas, calling them Zeus and Hermes. That's a bizarrely specific overreaction, isn't it? What is going on there?
Or what about that weird character, Simon the magician? The book says an entire city had nicknamed him the Great Power of God. Now, that's not just a clever stage name for a guy who does some impressive illusions. That is a title of supreme divine authority. So who was this guy really?
And let's go all the way back to the very beginning of Acts, to Pentecost. We get this really detailed list of all the nations that were there. Parthians and Medes and Elamites. Is the author Luke just trying to show off how big the crowd was? Or is that list actually a clue to something way, way bigger?
See, what if these aren't just random, quirky stories? What if they're puzzle pieces, clues that all point to a single, forgotten worldview, a cosmic map that, once you see it, changes how you read the entire book, and maybe even the whole Bible?
So how do we unlock this thing? Well, the key is hidden in a worldview that all the ancient writers just took for granted, but we've mostly forgotten about. It's rooted deep in the Old Testament, and it all hinges on one single, crucial verse that is often mistranslated.
And this right here, this is the linchpin. In most of our Bibles, Deuteronomy 32 says God divided the nations up according to the sons of Israel. But the oldest manuscripts we have, like the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Septuagint, they say something totally different. They say God divided the nations according to the sons of God. Now, that's not a typo. It's an absolute game changer.
So who are these sons of God? Well, in the biblical viewpoint, these weren't human beings. They were supernatural beings, members of God's heavenly court, his divine council. And here's the crucial point. After the rebellion at the Tower of Babel, God essentially disinherited the nations of the world, and he assigned these beings to govern them. And how many nations? 70. According to the list back in Genesis chapter 10, there were 70 nations. God basically puts them under new management, handing over jurisdiction to this supernatural council while he sets aside just one nation, Israel, for himself. This cosmic arrangement sets the stage for the entire rest of the Bible.
But this whole plan was a complete and utter disaster. If you read Psalm 82, it sounds like God putting these supernatural rulers on trial in a courtroom. He accuses them of being corrupt, of ruling unjustly, and of keeping the nations trapped in spiritual darkness. Their failure was so catastrophic that the psalm says all the foundations of the earth are shaken.
So now you've got a cosmic-level problem that needs a cosmic-level solution. And that solution begins at a turning point that these corrupt rulers never, ever saw coming: the cross.
This is just stunning. Paul claims that the rulers of this age, and that's his term for these same territorial powers, were completely duped. They thought that crucifying Jesus was their ultimate victory. They had no idea they were actually walking right into a divine trap that would seal their own doom.
The verdict of the cross wasn't defeat. It was total, absolute victory. This verse in Colossians couldn't be more clear. Jesus' death and resurrection didn't just beat these powers, it disarmed them. It stripped them of their authority and publicly shamed them in the spiritual realm. The war was over, and they had lost.
Okay, so if the war is already won at the cross, then what is the book of Acts all about? It's about the ground invasion. Think of it like this. D-Day has already happened. Now the Spirit-empowered troops are hitting the beaches to begin the campaign of liberating every last square inch of enemy-held territory. So first, let's just quickly remember the pattern of judgment that happened way back at Babel. Humanity unites in pride, their languages get all confused by God, and the 70 nations are scattered and handed over to these sons of God. That's the problem that the book of Acts is designed to solve.
Because then you flip over to Pentecost, and what you see is a perfect point-for-point reversal of Babel. Believers unite, but in humility, not pride. Languages are miraculously understood, not confused. And representatives from all those scattered nations are gathered together and begin to be reclaimed for God.
And here, right here, is the smoking gun. Luke, the author of Acts, is a brilliant writer. He uses the exact same, very specific, and rare Greek words for confused and divided that the Greek translation of the Old Testament used to describe what happened at Babel. That is not a coincidence. He is practically screaming at his readers, hey, this is the undoing of that.
So once you have this cosmic map, those original puzzles from the beginning just snap right into place. Simon the magician wasn't just some performer. He was a counterfeit territorial authority, the great power who was being displaced by the arrival of the true king. And that crowd in Lystra, they weren't just being superstitious. They saw real supernatural power, and they logically gave it the names of the only supernatural administrators they knew, Zeus and Hermes. And that list of nations at Pentecost? It wasn't random at all. It was a roll call of the disinherited nations from Genesis 10 who were now being formally invited back into the family of God.
This worldview doesn't just solve a few mysteries, you see. It completely redefines the entire mission of the apostles, especially the journeys of a man named Paul. Paul's travels followed a very clear cosmic-geographical logic. He starts in Jerusalem, right? That's Yahweh's own territory. Then he moves into Samaria, which is kind of like contested ground. And from there, he launches out into the Gentile world, all that disinherited territory. And what was his ultimate goal? Spain. Why Spain? Because in the ancient mind, that was the edge of the world, the very end of the line for the disinherited nations.
So you see, Paul's mission wasn't just about sharing a nice message. He saw himself as an agent of cosmic reclamation. He was crossing spiritual borders, marching into enemy-held territory, and liberating people from the dominion of these failed, corrupt, supernatural governors.
But the story goes even further than that. The ultimate goal isn't just to save people from these corrupt territories, it's about saving them for a purpose that is truly mind-bending.
The New Testament hints at an absolutely astonishing end to this story. Believers, redeemed humans, are destined to become the replacement for that corrupt divine counsel. When Paul asks the Corinthians, "Do you not know that we are to judge angels?" Or when Revelation promises believers authority over the nations, this is what they're talking about. The ultimate plan is for God's redeemed human family to inherit the cosmic, administrative role that the fallen sons of God forfeited all the way back at Babel.
And that leaves us with a final thought. The book of Acts isn't just a record of what happened 2,000 years ago. It's the opening chapter of an ongoing cosmic campaign. So if this cosmic map of the world is real, what does that change about how you see your part in this unfolding story?